of insurance fraud, because insurance is a for-profit business. They are going to pass on to their customers as much of the cost of doing that business as they can. Most modern insurers are getting very astute at detecting fraud, and they're getting very good at combating it. But that also costs money.
Yes, it does.
An insurance company is either going to overpay on a fraudulent claim, or they're going to defend it successfully. But that too is going to cost money, because I don't work for free, although I want to stress my rates are very reasonable. I don't work for free. Lawyers don't work for free.
That was the best laugh all day. All right.
Sounds like you don't really believe me.
I'm a little tiny bit skeptical. I'm not from Missouri, but you would have to show me.
Hey, I'm not even charging you for this call. But look, insurance companies have to decide when they're confronted with an obviously fraudulent claim. Are we going to overpay this claimant, or are we going to pay in a modern metropolitan area the going cost of defense, which is not, it's not cheap. We do this very efficiently. I've been doing this long enough. I can defend these cases efficiently, but the market dictates what it costs. Either way, you and I are going to pay our share of those heightened expenses every year when our premiums increase. That's part of the reason. And it's true whether it's this curmudgeonly old cynical defense attorney. It's true for you. It's true for the plaintiff's attorneys who file these lawsuits. Everybody pays the cost of insurance fraud, and that's just one way.
Absolutely. And it's not just your car insurance. I mean, I just finished, my whole stint of open enrollment for healthcare insurance, and both Medicare and the ACA, and the cost of premiums and everything, and listening to all of the people that were searching for good insurance options. And you just can't help but wonder, how much is the cost of that insurance fraud running people up?
I think it's significant. What do we know about our healthcare system? We know that it's exorbitantly expensive. Last year, healthcare spending grew to over $3.6 trillion. That's almost 5% more than the year before. That averages out to about $11,000 per person. Now, you can attack that average. Averages work how they work. The reality is, I can't remember where I read this, but something on the order of 10% of the most sick and injured account for the vast majority of per person healthcare spending. But of course, that skews that skews against those of us who aren't profoundly sick or injured and don't spend nearly that much. But the bottom line is, if you look at an average, $11,000 per person in healthcare expenses each year, a lot of that is driven by organized medical fraud. You rear-ending these individuals who forced you to do so is just the start of the fraud. Medical fraud, organized medical fraud, which is something I'm very involved investigating and defending, is itself a billion-dollar industry, probably just in Cook County where I am alone, with a B, $1 billion.
I bet it is. I'll bet it is.
Yeah. And what that means is, for instance, we see on these injury claims, there are organized rings. It starts with a street-level chaser who funnels the claimants to an attorney. The attorney then funnels the claimants to a network of providers, all of whom are going to participate. None of them charge the claimant directly. They create bills, which they then send to the attorney. The attorney then holds them for 2 years. They assert a lien, L-I-E-N. In the meantime, a lien is a legal device by which somebody who's owed money can claim, can put in a claim for the amount of their bill from a future settlement or verdict.
Okay.
And what we're seeing from these particular providers who are most active, I don't want to paint too broad a brush, but for instance, in the interventional pain management sphere, we're seeing the same providers, and they are charging on the order of magnitude of dozens of times more than their peers. A procedure which a legitimate, non-fraudulent setting would cost only a few grand, and that's, let's say we're talking about an interventional facet injection in the cervical spine, inclusive of the physician's professional fee, the facility fee, anesthesia if there is any, all the associated charges. You might, in a legitimate setting, see that go for $2,500 to $5,000. It might be a little low. In the providers we're seeing, the same procedures are going for $40,000-$50,000 per pop. And
wow.
they're largely able to get away with it because, of course, American healthcare pricing is the Wild West. There are some standards, but they're not rigid. And it's basically what can you get away with?
It is pricing that it's called market bear pricing. What the market will bear. You price it for what the market will bear. And it's why the people need to be constantly requesting quotes up front. Because
yes,
the only way to combat this overly expensive healthcare is to be involved on a grassroots level. And if you go to the doctor and you just go, they're going to charge you whatever the market will bear. But if you go in and you say, I don't want to have this visit or this procedure until I know what it's going to cost, I will bet you that 9.9 times out of 10, they'll look at you and go, I don't know. I don't have to tell you that. When in fact, they do. That's in the ACA law that if you ask for an estimate, they are required to give it to you, and it has to be in writing. But so many people don't know that, and they're too afraid to do it. But they don't understand that when you're paying a copay of 20% for every $100 you get knocked off for the price of that procedure, you save 20 of it. 20 of it's in your own pocket. And people are not really grasping that. They're like, why doesn't insurance cover it all? Because they can't afford to.
Correct. One of, I would say, our systemic problems as a people, as a society, and I think it's unique to America because of our healthcare system, we are not active, engaged participants in our own healthcare, and especially when it comes to pricing. We exist in a healthcare system in which pricing is skewed towards large employer-provided group plans. Pricing is not, most often, set for considerations of the individual consumer. As you point out, though, that said, you can demand to know within a reasonable range what this is going to cost. It doesn't occur to people to ask that. And I can't think of another segment of our economy in which somebody willingly enters into an exchange without having any idea what it's going to cost.
I
agree.
Just
kind of how, and it's a real tragedy. And those who are most cynical and most interested in capitalizing on that absolutely do.
Yep. And I'm going to be doing a whole show on that soon because I spent a good deal of time pro bono, as you call it, writing letters for people that would bring me bills and say, but if my deductible for the year was this, why did I get a bill for 10 times that? I'm like, you don't know this bill. It's outside of what you've already met your deductible. And I would have to write letters and, and that's the other end of the fraud. The healthcare providers are taking the insurance company payment, but they're also billing the individuals. And so they get paid twice on one procedure. And it's starting to really get me a little bit hot under the collar. Now, we only have about a minute and a half left, Eric. So in that last minute, I want you to tell people that are totally fascinated or they feel like they absolutely are going to need some help. How can they get in touch with you and learn more or find out if, they actually do have a legitimate complaint?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to share this info. But probably the best way to learn more about my practice and to get hold of me, check out the website of my law firm. That's Hepler, Hepler, Broom, as in sweet, HeplerBroom.com. You can learn about my firm. You can learn about my practice. And if you want to reach out to me directly, probably the best way is by email, because I'm frequently all over God's green earth, in court, at depositions, at meetings, what have you. And that's Eric, ERIC .Moch, MOCH, at HeplerBroom, one word.com. That's eric.moch at HeplerBroom.com. I'm always happy to engage people in discussion. I'm not necessarily the attorney who would be able to help you fight this fight, but I have a large network of folks who might just fit that bill if we decide that's what you need.
Awesome. That is totally awesome. And I know that there are people out there that are going, oh my God, I had an accident. I didn't even realize I was scammed. There's somebody out there right now saying, oh my God, they might not be in your state, but now they know they might be able to do something about it. But it's been so cool to have you on the show today, and so awesome to learn a little bit about your expertise and how people can figure out if they're being schemed or scammed, as they may say. And we'd like to really just give you our thanks for being on the show today. And
Well,
for
it's
all
great
of
to talk to you. Thank you for having me.
you, so welcome. The privilege was ours. For all of you out there listening, I think the one key takeaway that we can have from today's show is, if you have a question or a doubt, or that little voice on the inside says something is a little bit off, you probably need to ask additional questions. Or seek out an expert to help you ask those questions. And you know what I'm going to say before I say it, but I always say it at the end. Be grateful and you will attract good things. And until next time, thank you for joining us. This is Rhonda Cobb, the Money Coach.